Huh, let's see. So I'm Elizabeth Clark. I'm a therapist in town. I work mostly with teenagers, and been doing it actually this year 30 years. Yeah. So my name has been more like Elizabeth instead of like Elizabeth most of my life. So anyways, about 10 years ago, I started noticing this significant sort of change in teenagers, the teenagers I was talking about, and mostly in the area of sort of romance and sex and, you know, exploring their bodies and stuff. And it was pretty disturbing to me, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, I mean, there was always sort of the kids who did things badly, and then there were the kids who did things okay, and kids who did things really well, and it kind of mostly went with how they were parented, and, you know, a lot of, you know, all the variables that go in there. And all of a sudden, I just started seeing kids not responding in the way that they had in the past. And I spent a couple of years going, what could it be? And I looked and I looked and I researched and I researched. And slowly, because about 10 years ago, was just about when the social media world started becoming a part of their world. And I saw, oh gosh, there are some correlations here between all of a sudden they had access to pornography, and all of a sudden they had access to, you know, looking at each other when they were in the dark and talking to each other. And so I really wanted research on how this was going to affect kids. And for a brief moment, there was a little bit of research on there was a very little bit of research on text or sexting. And then there was just no information at all about how, because then I started wondering, like, what's this cyber world going to do to the development of our kids? What's it going to do to our families? And so I have been studying so hard for like the last 10 years, and only in maybe the last 6 months, there's kind of been this quiet, like nobody really knows, nobody was, you know, they didn't really have a before and after of brain scans. They didn't think to, you know, they didn't know this change was coming up, so they didn't do the pre and the post. And then all of a sudden, in the last 6 months, as I'm sure you've known, there's just been a tsunami of information about what's going on in the cyber world and how it's affecting teens. And most of it is like kind of scary, and it's kind of big. And so a group of us got together after last year. We had a really hard year last year with our teens, and really nationally and globally, it was a really hard year because we saw a lot more kids being admitted to the hospital for depression, for anxiety, and then for suicidality. And so a bunch of us got together and said, what could we do? And my main thing was like, I don't know if there's pure correlations between what's going on with teens and the cyber world, but I know this is, in general, the cyber world has to influence our kids. So that's a brief introduction. And then a bunch of us got together, and we got this great funding through a grant through the Western Colorado Community Foundation. So I can come out and speak to people and speak to kids, and we have the gatherings, and we're just trying to look at the cyber world. What we're trying to do is not come from a fear motivator, but from a strength and a power and a look at our own values, and then making decisions in the cyber world. Because we know the cyber world is great. And so what I wanted to do, I remember once I came to talk to you guys, and I remember thinking, these people don't really want to talk. They're just like, oh, thank you for being here, and our kids are being fed and taken care of. And so if you don't want to talk, don't worry. I can keep going. But I was wondering if anybody wanted to say what they love. Let's start with that. What do we love? And it can be really, well, not too secret, but like, what do you love about the cyber world? Not what you love for your kids, but what do you love personally about the technology that brings us into the internet? What's fun? So one of the things, let me see, all right, now, thought I'd have a pulpit and you wouldn't know that I wanted to look these things up. So there's 3 areas that we do know affect kids' development. The cyber world affects them. So this is more of the scary ideas. One is cognitively. We know that the kids that have been raised pretty much plugged in most of their lives have much more difficult time focusing on anything. They have a very short attention span. They problem solve shallow. They don't go deep into their problems, into problem solving. And they're frequently sort of, and we'll get to this, sort of cognitively full, exhausted, filled up, more than they can take. And so that sort of exhausts our brains. Our brains used to work, they still do. Our brains are really slow to adapt, and that's really why a lot of this is here. But like when we read books, you know, you read a book. You know how you read a book? I read in the tub. Shouldn't maybe say that, but I do, because this is funny, because this is exactly what the brain does. You're reading, and then all of a sudden your brain just kind of shuts off. So I baptize a lot of books. And all my friends laugh because I have books that are, and no one loans me books because I have books that are like always like this. For Christmas, that's what I gave everyone, was all my fat, baptized books. But what happens is our brain, what we're supposed to do is sort of use our frontal lobe. And when and the frontal lobe is the part that takes everything in and learns and digests and makes connections. And then when it gets tired, then we kind of like stop and we kind of take a break. So we drive and we cook and then so when we're reading, all of a sudden you just know, like, oh, I'm done. You know, it's like, oh, I'm done, and I know this way. But other people just know, oh, you're done, and so you put your book down. But the technology world, it's just rapid, and it doesn't. We don't get the, hey, it's enough. We don't get it as simply as we do when we're reading. So there's just sort of an exhaustion. Socially, they have. They're finding that kids that are online a lot have a really hard time reading emotions. They don't read our emotions, right? The good news is if this has happened, you know, from 0 to 2, there's actually long-term permanent problems. So we're just going to pretend we never, ever let kids from birth to 2 be looking at screens for a long time. Unless you're on an airplane that I am on, I have no problem. Then you can.
Does that include TV?
Yeah, they're really, what they're finding is that brain is just like, right? And so anything that's just shown to it like this, they actually, all those connections just sort of stop. And they don't really, they're learning, yes?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what's a long period of time?
Well, I mean, really, if you read the stuff, I mean, there's actually countries where it is illegal to show your kids have screen time from birth to 2. They've found that it so damages permanently their ability to get cognitive process. So certainly those kids that are just it's easy, man, throwing them the phone and stuff, but it's a problem. And so like sitting them in front of a television is from what I hear, is pretty significantly bad. Okay, did I lose a lot of you there? Sorry. I'm sure they're fine, but I know. I always usually just slide by that and you ask, because you're just like, oh yeah, be careful.
Well, because I don't give my kids screens, but our TV, you know, like we watch movies, and
yeah,
a lot of kids that I have that come in like are glued to the TV, and I always think like, well, I could use the break. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm
I know.
okay with this, but now I feel bad.
But the 0 to 2, we really should try to not. That's pretty much what they're saying, is that it really, it sort of dwarfs their learning, the synapses for learning. Okay, sorry, but I mean, and people have been doing it for a long time, and I know that because it is different. That's not that different in the cyber world. So socially, they're not reading faces so much. So again, I was just going to slide that one over, but we didn't. So from 2 on, if they've had a lot of screen time, and they're not able to really read emotions, and it is weird when you're with a kid and you can tell they have no idea. Like, you know, you're giving them and they're just they don't know the nuances of emotions. And really what they're finding is that most kids, thanks to emojis, I blame emojis for everything, though I use them, there's like 3 main, so of all the emotions that we have, the broad range of emotions, we've really gotten down to what they'll say is angry, sad, and happy. And so, especially, so you'll see teen boys. This is so hard for me. I see teen boys, nice kids, and everything that's not sad or happy is pissed off, angry. So when they're embarrassed, oh no, they're angry. When they're jealous, they're angry. When they're frustrated, they're angry. You know, and there's just sort of this one thing that comes out of their mouth all the time, and it's just like, you know, I hate him, you know, like they just say, he's an idiot, I hate him. Like, that's just sort of what they say for anything there's emotion that has, you know, anything that's an emotion that's negative for them, they just go straight to anger. So, again, the emotional stuff is dwarfed also. Don't get afraid, because we got really easy fixes. So what they're finding is that if the kids are away from a screen, they really quickly, I mean, there's a lot of plasticity in our brain, they really quickly get it again. So that's the nice news. They are not as kind, there's a lot more bullying, their friendships don't last as long, and there's a lot higher conflict. And then really socially, this is the one that, like, you'll figure out the recipe for fixing this. We don't gather as much. Like, just gathering right here is a big deal. And we used to gather all the time. And as people, we don't gather as much. So, so there's that solution, is to gather often, which I'll talk about too. And then finally, emotionally, they really have a lot more depression, anxiety, suicidality, suicides, and really just this sort of, and I think it's sort of hit all of us, is sort of a hopelessness. There's a much bigger feel of hopelessness, especially among teens. Okay, I promise you easy solutions. So one of the things I want you to do is think about your time, because how big of a deal is this? So 24 hours a day, and I know some of you have different sleep patterns and stuff, but most of us sleep about 7 hours a day. So that, except for this man who never sleeps.
I'm lucky.
Well, that's almost good news in this, because you need more hours. Okay, so most of us work about 7 hours, sleep about 7 hours a day. Most of us work, and our kids go to school about 8 hours a day, so there's 15. And then, and some of you guys are at home, so this gives you, because you can kind of get a little bit more freedom and things done.
Working would be easier.
Yeah, no, I do too. And then we spend about 3 hours eating, prepping food, showering, straightening our hair, you know, just maintaining our own body. We spend about 3 hours a day. Okay, so that leaves us 6 precious hours. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Long time no see.
Oh, wonderful. So where was I? Oh yeah, that leaves us 6 hours, 6 precious hours. And in that time, which really isn't like nothing, it's a decent amount of time. But in that time, we have to travel from place to place. We have to go shopping. We have to do laundry. We have to clean our home. We have to talk to our friends and keep in touch with our families. We have to parent. We have to take care of these bodies. We have to take care of all those little kids' bodies. And we have like hobbies and things we're interested in. If we have, you know, communities that we go to, we have to do that. So really, there's not a lot of time in the day, and there wasn't pre-cyber world. So let's like, I always feel like this giant like alien thing like just landed on us, because we had lives, we had real big lives, and now it's like it's on us. Okay, so now we not only have all of that, we have technology that we maintain. We have to charge everything. Just that. When are they going to fix that one? You know, we have to charge everything. We have to make sure that we're upgraded, updated. We have to pay for things. We have to make sure that we have Wi-Fi service, all that. Then we have the actual stuff, like there's games to play, and there are people to keep up with. There are things that make out of toilet paper rolls. There are, you know, yeah, I know.
I just stick with the real wood.
There you go. I know. There's all this information, And there's all these people and ideas coming at us at all times. And so right now, the average American, and I was so like thinking I was way above all of this because, you know, I'm old and I don't get on social media and I do this sort of thing. So I started seeing how close I was to the average. The average time, some of you may have already heard these stats, but how many times a day do you think that we pick up our phone and kind of just click it back, you know, make it come to life?
I'm gonna say 300.
That is actually high. It's it's 85 times a day, which is 5 times an hour, 12 times a minute. 5 times an hour, every 12 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody who can do math. Not me. And so there's actually very good free apps. The way to solve this is with an app, is monitoring. They will monitor your screen time and your children's screen time. Just tell you how, and non-judgmentally. Not like, are you on that phone? No, it's just like, it'll just say how many times you clicked your phone back to life. It will tell you, and this is the big one, how many times a day do you think we type, click, swipe our phone? Some kid got it right on the dot the other day. 2,600 times a day, 152 an hour, 2.5 a minute. Because once we click it on, we don't just usually like go, oh, it's on.
I
We
check
usually
my time a lot.
I check my time a lot too.
You're what?
My time, because I got one of those to see.
Oh,
And so every
Are you
time I
good?
check my time, I mean, I'm not gonna tell my number here. It's not in the classes, but it was decent.
okay. So then,
But every time I checked my time, I was like, I have not been on my phone 5 times in the last half an hour. But I do constantly check what time it is. But
okay.
I don't have a watch, and I don't have a clock in my house either, other than on my stove.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not really.
Right.
I know my kids' teachers like they really should have you should have a clock in your house. I'm like, well, I just don't want that. I'm gonna build like a 12-foot clock.
There you go.
So-
Next weekend.
So the average small person, 2 and up, right, is on. So from 2 to 5, they have screen time about 2 hours a day. From 5 to like 10, they kind of go up to around 3 to 5. Middle school is 5 to 7. High school is 7 to 10 hours a day that they are looking at a screen. Adults are 10.5 hours a day. That's about 1 to 2 hours phone. That's about 4 to 4.5 television, and then the rest is tablets and computers. So if that's average, and maybe you're like, yeah, it's not me, but I was surprised at how much I was checking, how much I was touching, how, you know, what it is. But if you look at the 6 hours, that's when you start going, it doesn't actually all work. And so things that are, areas that we are diminishing in is, you know, face-to-face time, creativity. I mean, a lot of things are falling to the side. They aren't building parks as much in little communities because people aren't using parks as much. We definitely use our big park down here, but there's just a lot of things. So what do we want to do with that? One of the things I think it's really important that helps parents a lot is just to say, okay, instead of going through all that and trying to, you know, control it, getting your family, first of all, you know, just you, but then your family together and saying, what do we value? Because we got 6 hours. What do we value? And you know you value something by how much time, energy, and money you put into it. So as a family, it's really good to say, what do we value? Because really, so I almost feel like, you know, I'm at an AA meeting, because I really, when I saw that I was checking my phone at least 85 times a day, I started, and it was sort of embarrassing. And I do it when I was driving, which is like I'm so against, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I throw it in the back seat, not like way far in the back seat, because I can't, it's there. But what I found was I really, when I said, what do I value? I really looked at what was coming in. And a lot of it was, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, pizza, heart face, da da da. And it's like, oh, that's nice. And then I was like, oh, you know, like, what's up? You know, as opposed to, hey, can you pick up dinner? That's a very important text, not to forget to ring. But you know, hey, you can pick up dinner. Hey, you know, just information between family, I think is really important. But just the hey, what's up? Not much. What's up with you? You know, that sort of thing. I really realized how much, like, I don't care. Like, that is not worth me getting into an accident over, or being one of my 85 when I'm sort of cyber dieting. Like, how am I going to get rid of these cyber calories, sort of? So I really think that if you sit down with your families and really start looking at how you want to spend your time, energy, and money, and really specifically, what do we want to look at? How do we want to use the cyber world? What's great about it, and what isn't? Okay. Because I really believe, I'm going to give you my two futures thing. I really believe there's two futures. This is my little, because I do believe this. These kids, if they grow up just with us just kind of saying, yeah, whatever, it's going to be a different world than people who mindfully use the cyber world and keep our humanity really strong and keep our minds really strong. Because where the cyber world is really difficult on us, it's in our brains. It's you know, yeah, I guess you know, we're not moving as much, but it's really in our brain. So, so the three areas that I think are super important is one is I just think we come up to some awareness. We have to understand how the cyber world works so that when we want to decide how we want to use it, this will help. The first thing that's really difficult on our brains, I already went over, is too much information. It's too much. Our brains are not that quick. We are not computers. And so everything that comes in, like, oh, how many people get like 50 articles, you know, people like, oh, you should read this. Like, really? When am I going to read this? I should, because it looks good. But, oh, this one too. So much information. Too many, so again, too many accesses to information that are just. The other thing is, I think I'm going to go backwards. Too many people. We actually are social creatures that have a finite amount of people that we can be close to. Our finite number of people that we're really close to, that we know and we really know, is about 12 to 17. Maybe like us, just us. Like, this would be enough. This is the only amount of people that my brain can really understand and love and have compassion for and know their stories and be intimate with. About 17. Then we can know about 150, like the people at work, people it's like, you know, in your class and stuff. Then we can know about 150 people pretty well. We know their names, we've known each other, sometimes we've been better friends than others. And then we can actually go out to about 1,500 people that we sort of like, oh yeah, he works over there. Oh yeah, she's in 3rd grade. Oh yeah, I remember that person. So, and we have a small enough town that you can kind of feel like, yeah, we have that, right? The cyber world is very different. It sort of takes those slots from us because we don't get more slots just because we're in the cyber world. So, so all of our friends, all of our friends all over the place kind of take your slot from my life. And we get sort of socially exhausted, and we don't keep in touch with the 17 as much. We don't interact with the 17 as much because we gave the guy in New Jersey who's always, complaining on our Facebook page one of your slots. So that's another area that you want to look at, is how many people do you really want to let in? I'm not always like, yay, South Park, but there was a great South Park when Facebook first came on, about the ridiculousness of how many friends and how come you always had to say yes to every friend and you couldn't unfriend everybody. And it was hysterical because it really shows like how big can you get and how upset did people get if you asked for a friend request and I didn't put you on, and how it means so much popularity wise, how many people are following you, as opposed to, why are these people, they're not in my house, they're not in this room, they're not my intimates, why are they getting all of my time and attention? So just too much opportunity for entertainment, constantly, diversion. But again, it exhausts the brain. And the problem with an exhausted brain is that all those things that we showed before, they're all about an exhausted brain. Okay, the next thing that you really want to look at is too negative. There's too much negative information coming our way. So I'm going to tell you why there's too much negative information. There's ways to profit from the cyber world. There's the old-fashioned way where you have a product or a service and people buy your service, pay you, and you make money. That's sort of the old-fashioned way, and that's how people prosper on the internet. And then there's so I don't have any problem with great prosperity using the internet. But then there's the people who don't prosper from that. They prosper from our attention. And that's where a lot of our, like the most negative aspects of the cyber world are. So let's say, I bought a swimsuit the other day from, Swimsuit Limited or something. And ever since then, like every time I get online, Swimsuit Limited is like popped up all over the place. So I'm playing my nightly spider solitaire. Boom, Swimsuit Limited. So what happens is Swimsuit Limited is selling a product, but somebody who's getting paid to try to have me always find them is begging, demanding my attention. And so what they found in the old days when, they used to try to get us to buy things, they put like a sexy lady, like, oh, you'll be sexy if you drink this beer. They put luxury items. Oh, you'll be wealthy if you buy this car. Or I remember buying as a teenager Clearasil because I was absolutely sure that if I bought Clearasil, I have no zits and I would be so popular and happy all the time. And it didn't happen, but I still, still use my little bit of money to buy Clearasil. And then I remember being in 7th, 8th grade, and they talked to us about that. They actually showed just what, like, look at this. What are they selling? Will you really get, rich? Will you get to, like, drive around with Matthew McConaughey if you have a Lincoln, drive a Lincoln? And I remember just that information really helped me go, oh. And all my life, when I see a commercial, I go, oh, yeah, right. Oh, sure. But in the cyber world, they don't make as much money off of each view, right? They have to have billions of views. I mean, every time I touch something, they get a cent. But there's so many of us touching constantly, 2,600 times a day, touching, that's how they make their money. And how have they done it? They said, how do these brains work? How do these noggins work? What's going to get your attention? And mostly what they do is just go the old cheap, horrible way and just scare the heck out of us. They just scare us. And so I'll give you an example. Headlines. Headlines have become a big deal. I got rid of all my headlines. It's like the best thing ever. I don't know. Like the really big stuff shows up. People go, hey, but all the little daily is just gone. It's just gone from my life. It's so nice because if it's there, my brain's like, oh my God, really? Like, it gets all excited. So if I had an option to see an article on some really great way that in a third world nation they're filtering water for nothing and changing everybody's lives, or my brain sees the thing that says the 5 things in your kitchen that will kill you, my brain's gonna go, really? Like the 5 things? Like what are they? I knew the knife, but it's the sponge. Like the sponge. Seriously. So this is a true story. So the sponge, it was one of the 5 things in your kitchen that will kill you. I read it. And my husband started getting all like, hey, the sponge, man, we got to watch the sponge now. And so we start putting it in our dishwasher, and then he's like, Mom, we have to buy more sponges. I think we're using them too. So we're buying more sponges. And then finally, the last article he read, where it was like, boom, he got really into sponge, the sponge thing. And the last article he read was, you can only use your sponge for 12 swipes. and then it's a goner. You can't put, like, the dishwasher doesn't work, nothing. And I thought, I was like, no, I am done with the sponge. Once a year, I remember my mother bought a new sponge, you know, it was like a big sponge party. But I don't know if that's accurate, but it felt like that. I mean, you know, we used sponges forever. We were fine. You know, nothing bad happened. So I'm stopping reading anything about sponges anymore and buying my normal allotment of sponges. But again, if we've got these brains that are pretty tired by all of this, too many people, the negative stuff is we just fall over into it. And if that didn't hurt us, if it made us buy things we weren't going to or lean towards other people, that would be fine. But what it is doing is if you're just scared and scared and scared and scared and scared and you're always starting to think that the world is a very unsafe place and that people are awful, people who are a little different than you are just awful, that you really do start getting a lot less hopeless. You put yourself out there less, and the emotional consequences are pretty high, and it's really happening to our kids. I really believe that. The other thing that they do is build in addictive qualities, and they're just starting to show. You know, we've always sort of known that gaming is very much the exact same. You know, they use the algorithms that they use in Vegas to try to get you to ding. And for example, so we totally know that the gaming stuff, right? Ding, 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 bing, 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 bing. I saw that kid the other day, came in, he had his little pad. He's like, oh, I want to show you Jurassic Park. And it was a boring game. It was just all these dinosaurs just walking around. You could feed them. But if you so here's this little kid, I was so bored. So, and this little kid, but then if he just touches the dinosaurs, ding, 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 coins come out. No, like, what? Coins? Like T-Rex gives you a coin? And they all you have to do is touch them. See, that little ding, it was like, oh, we all just went like, oh, we got the ding, we got the coins, we got the coins.
You like totally checked out just for a second.
I know, just for a second. Right, but it was perfect timing, thank you. I was like a soft pitch. Yeah, so anyways, so just those coins, the ding, 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 ding. Here's a little kid kind of pretending to feed animals and go places, but mostly what he was doing is just constantly dinging these coins, and again, ding, 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 ding. Okay, so the good news is, this is important, the good news is there's just the bad and good news is there's a tiny bit of dopamine, a little like a little sip of beer. And I like people to think about that when they're seeing little kids going ding, 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 ding. Why don't you just hand them a little beer and have them give a little smile? Because it is that. It's a little bit of a high, a tiny, but again, minuscule. Because just us sitting here, so the amount of dopamine that a little ching 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 of a coin in a game gives us is this big. Just us being here is like this big. So like playing board games. So the solution to the gaming world that the Pediatrics Association came up with was, as much as they'd say, watch how long they do it and blah, 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 blah. It was play board games together, eat dinner together, and don't do really harsh punishment. Because the harsh punishment definitely brings down the dopamine level. And then playing board games is just such a bing, 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 bing. It's so fun. You're having such a good time. You get nice and filled up with feeling good. That the gaming world doesn't do it as much for you. So those are like simple solutions. Is definitely the meal every night is just super, super important. And yeah, those were the three things again. Those are sort of the nice thing. So the dopamine, ding, 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 and then all of a sudden, I'm really mad at Mark Zuckerberg because I thought it was kind of cool. He came up with the social network, but they actually build in algorithms to the Facebook too. The Facebook. I say that because he got rid of it and got famous. So now I just like the Facebook because I'm mad at him. But they actually really go very hard on trying to get you addicted to the ding, to the bing. Including they withhold likes. So if you take your picture of your bowl of soup and you're like, oh, my bowl of soup, and you're like, oh, is anyone going to say anything? If they instantly got a little ding, it's not as big as a ding as if you wait, because if you wait, you're checking it more. Remember, every tap they get paid for, And so you show, my soup, it's a pretty bowl of soup, and nobody says anything. You start wondering, so you're checking it. So they actually withhold in the same algorithm that works for, slot machines. They withhold and give our likes to us so that we get a little bit more, that we stay online, we do a little bit more dinging on it. The other thing they do that's really just, it's just sort of evil, is that since they get more, for our attention, is that they really encourage high, ugly conflict. And so you wonder why the really nice people say, like, oh, you kiss your grandmother with that mouth? Like, horrible things people are saying online to each other, about each other. Because if I say to Kathy, let's say you say to me, because I did this the other day and I think I totally offended someone. So you said to me, Elizabeth, that scarf was so pretty that you wore today. Then our interaction, what people will get paid for, is me saying, oh, thanks, I got this from my friend, thanks a lot, Kathy. And maybe somebody else say, I saw that today too, Elizabeth, that's really cute. Maybe 3 interactions. But if she says to me, right.
It's not based.
But if I say, if she says, Elizabeth, you looked a little skanky in that outfit you wore today, she and I are gonna ding, 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 ding. I'm gonna go, what? And she's gonna say, yeah. And I'm gonna say, what? And she's gonna say, you wear that to church? And we're gonna have this big conversation, right? And then you guys are gonna join in. You're gonna be mad at Kathy, like, really? She looked really cute. And then somebody else is gonna go, no, I heard some things about Elizabeth, and I understand why she. And, and there's gonna be 50, 60 people, hits that they're gonna get paid for. And so it's really, this horrible, and it is a horrible culture in the cyber world, especially with kids, but really a lot of adults too. And it's just this place where it's somehow okay to be vile and say things you, I hope, would never say in real life. And what I'm finding in teenagers is that just in the last year, that started to spill into real life. I'm surprised at how much some of the things that are being said. And I think mostly the real life stuff is still sort of the disenfranchised kids, which you guys are probably working with and raising. But I do think that so awareness, right? We're talking about awareness. How much do we want to come in? How many people do we want to have in our lives? How do we want to, again, values, how do we want to be in the cyber world? And that's something you can sit your kids down and say, you know what, we actually value this. And we value maybe discourse as opposed to just, judging people and saying horrible things. And really start talking to them about our values, our family values, and how we're going to put them in the social media world, how we're going to look at Facebook, how we're going to decide what to do about the stuff that comes our way. Because there are things we can do. I want to just say, this is really good news. It is finally socially just becoming acceptable to unfriend people and to block people. And it's okay. And it's almost becoming a little cool. Like these really cool teen boys are like, I'm off the media. And they'll get off like all the media, not Snapchat, let me tell you, but working on that one. But and really Snapchat doesn't, as much as it's more a little sexy, it doesn't get conflict. It's not high conflict. There's not a lot of drama. And boys are just saying, I am terrified of being in the social media, and I'm terrified that any moment somebody's going to say something about me. All of a sudden, something I really did, something I did not do. Doesn't matter, because it's just going to go out, and when it goes out, if it hits, it goes viral. It just goes, this whole town, that's what happens. Some kid says something, and, not all of it catches, but some of it does, and poof. And kids are just ruined. They're just ruined because of this. So I have these boys, and it's not girls yet, which is really sad. But boys that are shutting down a lot of the social media, that when they hear something just vile, they just block people, and when they get the text, why'd you block me, blah, 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 they'll just say nothing personal, I just didn't appreciate what you said, I just don't like to read that stuff. And always, they come from, because I ask them, because I'm just like, you did? I'm so proud of them, and I just want to like, all of them have parents that have modeled that for them. All of them have parents that have said, well, I'm not doing that, or hey, or, you know, and they talk more, so they have some communication about what's going on in the cyber world, and they suggest that, and these boys are so relieved to get rid of a lot of this, you know, and they're really happy to be able to say, so, I think it's Instagram, is it Instagram? No, Snapchat has the, is it, you know, where you talk to each other every day.
It's Snapchat.
And what's it called?
The 100 something. I don't know what it's called.
But it's called a streak or something,
because
right?
if you get 100, it's like a big old.
Oh, it's such a big
Yeah.
deal. So people just send like a picture of their thumb, you know, and then it's like, oh, we have some intimacy because we have done this for like 200 days. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal when you break it. When you break it, if you break it, it is a huge insult to you that I didn't send you a picture of my thumb today. Or, you know, it's a huge thing. And I talked to a kid the other day. He's like, oh God, he goes, as soon as I always skip a couple of days because people are like, you broke it. And he's like, it was 3 days. And he just says, I don't do that. And so you're like, I love you. So it's starting to be okay to block those. And another good bit of news is it's starting to be okay for girls when they're getting relentlessly requested to say no. And that has not been the case at all. It's been they could be socially really injured for saying no. Okay, so where are we? How much time do we have? I'm kind of trying to get through this so you don't have to.
You got like another half hour if you need it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know what? So, okay, to be honest with you, I can't believe I never get through this because usually it's smaller groups and we talk a lot. So if you guys went, I mean, that's mostly my spiel, is just to be aware of how, you know, to be aware that our attention is what is being asked of us, and to teach your kids that, and to teach your kids about how basically, you know, that works. I also have a handout that I didn't get to Kathy in time, that is a really good, you can sit down, there's one for different ages, and it gives you some questions that you and your kid could kind of come up with like a little contract on like what you guys want, what you guys value as far as etiquette and how we treat people online and how much time we spend online. So I'm going to give that to Kathy, and she can either just get the link that's on that and send it to you guys, and you can just, you know, download it, or you can get people that. So first of all, I always have more to say, but I won't keep you too. But does anyone have specific questions right now? Because this is like a really quick overview. But does anyone have any specific questions about kids they're working with,